Should you invest in Bali or should you invest in the Australian property market? Hi, I'm Joe Kraus.
I'm Sam Powell, and we are the hosts of Property Pals Australia. And in this episode, we're going to be discussing the risks involved in investing for cash flow in Bali. See a lot of really good market material out there saying 12 to 20% return on investment. So we've gone in, we've dug a little bit deeper to give you the pros and the cons of the whole environment, and also, a key thing we touched on was how to avoid following the crowd and discover, what savvy investors are actually doing over there in Bali today.
Yeah, we also discussed how much it actually costs to set up and run a company to invest in Indonesia, what's involved with that. We talk about regulations and all those sorts of things and how often they can change. We also discuss what's actually involved in acquiring a development villa in Bali. So I sort of run through a bunch of steps to how to get to acquiring a villa or a development in Bali and or what the outcomes could be. And then I also discuss and weigh up the opportunity cost of investing $100,000 into Bali versus investing $100K into the Australian property market and the difference between the two.
Yes, some really juicy insights, especially considering that you live over in Bali and you've just got back from there for this research project. So I hope you get a lot out of it. But before we do get stuck into the episode, I wanted to tell you, as always, that this podcast is not the only way that we can help you for free. We have our How to Maximize Your Borrowing Capacity mini course available on the website. So head on over to propertypals.au/resources and use this tool to get a better ROI. And also another thing that we've come to say is if you are enjoying these podcast episodes, please leave a review and 5 stars, please. I know it sounds a little bit, cringy, but it definitely helps in helping get the word out there to help other people make these smarter property decisions.
Welcome to Property Pals, the podcast where we share everything around how to build a property portfolio, from researching areas, financing, structuring, buying, selling, and reinvesting to live a life of financial independence. As a disclaimer, any information shared by myself, Jared, Sam, and the Property Pals team is strictly general and should not be taken as constituting professional advice. You should consider seeking independent legal, financial, and taxation advice from a qualified professional. Welcome back, everybody, to another pod.
Yes, today we're talking about the beautiful Bali, aren't we, Jared? I just spent a bit of time over there. We got to go surfing in Uluwatu. You live the Jared Kraus life for a wee bit with my family, and I was doing a bit of research while I was over there because there's a lot of interesting investment opportunities is how they're marketed to people that I thought would be some really good value to sort of give people that boots on the ground kind of investment advice on my front. But how are you, my friend? How is Bali?
Bali is good. Bali is busy. I shouldn't complain. The social life is amazing. There's always people coming and going. Just had my sister and her husband come over. We went freediving and went to Gili Tea. The surf has been crazy good, and yeah, it's a good spot. Now with investing, do I invest in Bali? Not really. And I have my reasons why, and I'm sure they'll come up through this pod. But I wanted to dig into your research that you went and found. I think for people listening, I think the most important thing to understand through this pod is the difference between investing in Australia, investing in Bali, the difference on returns, and most importantly, risks. But that's just the vehicle. We're just talking about the vehicle. I think it's important to understand, how to choose the right strategy and then choose the right vehicle for your strategy, depending on how much work or stress and risk you want to take on. So this is to just share some figures and some case studies on investing in Bali, I guess, and helping people decide if it's right for them or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not opposed to investing internationally. It's just there's a lot more to it than what you would expect, and there's also increased risks. And like for me, majority of the reasons comes down is what you and I love about property is leverage, leveraging into an international company, international country. God, look at that. You're sure you can leverage it, but what you're really doing to getting that leverage is to pull equity out of your portfolio in Australia and use that cash essentially as to purchase that investment asset. So that's how you can use the leverage. But once again, you can't borrow against whatever investment that you're investing internationally. So a lot of people do have a big cash lump sum, and it does happen quite a lot. And then you're also up against the rules and regulations of that country, and also the cultural differences can be quite challenging. And then, going into and investing in locations like, say, Indonesia, Japan, places like that, trying to sell that asset, that's a whole new other story, right? Like it's easy to buy something. It's harder to sell it because you need to find a buyer. And I've seen that time and time again. And you alluded to a really good point with, starting with strategy is, becoming more and more like obvious as I grow in this space, that it is really important for people to have a look at all the options that are available and make what's best for them. The issue is that they don't know. And how are you meant to know, right? Like going back to what we talked about previously is we're all so busy, and then we find some money to invest in, and then it's just marketing everywhere, trying to take your money from you to try and increase your return on investment.
Yeah, sorry. I was listening. You just cut out for a second there. And I agree. Strategy is super important. Now, I want to know, like, let's talk about, I have a lot to share here around this.
Yeah, talk to me.
Well, first, I want to know what sort of marketing that you've seen that people are promising, and also, what are sort of what are the details of what you're seeing in people's marketing, and then I can sort of like share with people like what's real here happening on the ground, because that's setting up a company, investing into a country, the legislation, taxes, politics of it all. It's a nice dream. It's a really nice dream, and it's beautiful to say. It's really good for your egos. Like I own a couple of villas in Bali. Now or one or whatever it is. Tell me more. Tell me more about this marketing and what people are sharing, and I want to share what I actually know to be true based on friends that have done this sort of stuff, friends that live here with me in Indo. Bali.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll put some context around it. So there's a lot of investment businesses like buyers agencies in Australia and in developers, builders, investment businesses that are actually marketing to the Australian public, saying to go to Bali and buy a villa. You'll get a return on investment on an annualized basis. I've seen between 12 and 20%, which is pretty strong to achieve that kind of cash flow. And that's very enticing for people, right? Because like in Australia, from a residential point of view, you're probably looking at like if you're buying residential, you'd be probably negatively geared into a good capital growth asset at this stage. You can get neutral to slightly positive, but once again, you're sacrificing that capital growth. Commercial, different story. You're looking at slightly positive cash flow. Whereas these types of returns over in Bali, the villas that they're building out there, you're cash flow positive from day one. They understand it. You're right. You can go and build this villa and then rent it out to people on Airbnb, make a shit ton of money. There's what they promise you. But then you can go and live over there for a few weeks. So, have a holiday in your own villa and talk about it. I own this, right? So it's a beautiful place in the world. Definitely agree with that. There's a lot to love about it. However, the underlying fundamentals of an investment is concerning for me. Seeing people choosing to go over there and put their money into that into Indonesia and seeking that cash flow, because it's very easy to do so. But I look at the opportunity cost that's involved, and I wanted to do more research. So hence why I went over there to really dig into what is attracting so many people to go over there. So if you're looking at, let's take the mid-range of 15% return on investment, that requires about a 6.5 year holding period for you to get your money back, right? And the investment side, you can buy a villa over there for $45,000, and you'd probably have a bit more of an understanding of the different costs involved. But my concern around all that is, well, you're holding this asset you got to hold it for at least 6 years to actually make your money back, and then you got to hold it for probably another couple of years to actually enjoy the fruits of that investment. How many times are you going over there to use it? And then what was sort of the initial alarming point to me was, you're buying this asset, it's pure cash flow. You don't actually hold the land, so you've got no ownership to any kind of capital growth. The only capital growth you get is the income play. So in order to do that, you need to find someone like a local resident over there, or Indonesian local, and they essentially have the ownership of the property, and they lease it out to you for X number of years. So you need to have that strong connection with that local person. You need to trust that person as well. And then there's also the complexities of managing a property that's overseas as well. Probably that's the biggest risk. So you're getting no capital growth out of it, and then you're getting income. The other biggest risk that I'd see, and I'd like to riff on this with you, is the maintenance involved. Like, I was over there, Jared, and I stayed in a couple of reasonably new villas. The whole time I was just looking around, looking at the conditions. There's cracking in the render. The taps were either leaking or already rusting in a lot of the locations. Sometimes the water pressure was gone. Toilets were constantly running. And these were new villas that, looked really beautiful, but still had these maintenance issues where in Australia, if that was that condition, 3 years into, it being built, there's major red flags, right?
Yeah, and there's you need certain, in Australia we've got regulations, these things that we call regulations. In Australia, in Bali there's not that, doesn't exist. So I mean, in terms of like building property, and there are certain things boxes you need to check, but there's not the quality necessary, which is why it's a beautiful thing here. And also not so beautiful, or more drama and more chaos. And when you're investing, you are inviting a little bit of drama into your life, and it depends on how much drama you actually want to invite. My question to you is, in terms of build, and I want to go through a linear path of what I've learned of like deciding to invest into Bali to a finished product, and what that could look like. And all the steps that could be involved depending on how you want to invest. But I wanted to ask you firstly, are these companies that are marketing these developments, are they finding the location, securing the lease, and then are they doing the development? Like, are they building the villa or the apartment or whatever it is?
Yeah, generally a lot of them have investors, and they've started out small, and then what you do is you market one project. So you go over there, you get the lease. Once you got that lease, you put the plans together for the development. You haven't started building it. So what you do is you actually market it. And this is what a lot of, even developers all around the world, what they do is they have the concepts. They want to get pre-sales to confirm that there's money that's there to at least start the project. So what happens is you start off small, might do 4 villas, and then you market that. You get a list of people who are keen to invest, and therefore you can grow upon that. And you go, oh, well, this project's sold out, let's jump into this next project. And then there's investment buyers agencies that are basically got a whole list of investors looking for cash flow, and they can just put them into these types of products. And on a spreadsheet, they look amazing, but in reality, I feel it's a different story, and it's just the classic case in property that people are out there promising you the world and not giving you not having the long-term history to help you make that fully educated decision of what to do with your money.
Yeah. So it sounds easy to just go, I'm just going to go buy a villa, but when you want to do that in Indonesia, you need to secure a lease, right? Well, let's talk about before securing a lease and all that sort of stuff. Like, what's the strategy? Are you going to buy and hold and rent out, or are you going to buy this new and then resell it? Because it doesn't really make too much sense if you're going to invest in a development, have it developed, get this new product, and you already purchased a new product, and then you need to sell the new product again. I don't know if that's the smartest idea. Then you've got sounds like people going for cash flow of, I want to acquire this villa or this apartment or whatever it is, and I'm going to get this X amount of rent per month or week or whatever it is. Now, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
When you acquire a lease, to acquire a lease, you need what's called a PMA here in Indonesia. A PMA is a company, and they make it sound very easy. And I was going to go and get a PMA as to live here and to acquire a bike and a certain type of visa. Now, to set up a PMA, it was going to cost me $5,000 a year just in the setup, right? And that's for 2 years with an investor's visa. So it allowed me to be in the country. So if you're investing in Indonesia, you're going to need an investor's visa, and you're going to need a PMA, which is basically like a company, or what they call, a PTY LTD, or in America, an LLC, limited liability company. So that's just the setup, and that's just the fee for the visa to be able to invest into Indonesia. $5,000 a year.
$100 a week.
2 years. Now, if you, depending on how long you own this property, you might need to continually paying that. This is without paying tax. So the first year, and all of what I'm saying now is, I was about to do this at the start of this year in 2024, and I did a lot of research on this. But what happens is the regulation here changed super fast in terms of investors' visas, requirements, visas, companies, and stuff like that. It was different last year in 2023. And it changes very, very fast, and you may be out of pocket a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on what sort of situation or structure you're going to set this up in. So, right, as of now, you can have your company, which holds the property in Indonesia, and you pay 0% tax at the moment for the first year. After that, then you need to pay 10. You pay, I think it's like, forget the actual tax rate. It's around 10%, and then you also need to pay 10% or to your accountant to do your tax returns. So, say for example, it's $100,000. You pay 10% to $100,000 of income a year. You pay 10% to the government tax, and then you also pay 10% of whatever you make to the accountant to run your books. So it fluctuates, which is a scary thing in my opinion. And then you have this lease. Like you said before, you can acquire a lease, and there are some places in Indonesia that you can go and get freehold, or where you own the land, but you typically going to need an Indonesian partner for that. intimate or not, depending on what that looks like. And then you also, if it's a leasehold, then what happens is like you acquire this villa. Say you acquire this villa for $50,000, and you've got a leasehold of 20 years. Now leases can go anywhere from 5 years to 100 years. Now say you've got this 20-year lease for a $50,000 villa. What happens is when you've acquired it and you basically own it for that lease, and you can make your cash back maybe on, like, say, for example, the 5 or 6 years, 6.5, say 7-year range to be conservative. Now, after 7 years, maybe you get to 10 years time and you want to sell it. It's going to be a depreciated property and the lease has less time on it. So for an investor to acquire that, it's a bit more of a risk, which means, yes, you can get a little bit of capital growth depending on what the situation is with your lease and your property. But if you went all the way to the 20 years and then you had to resecure another lease, that lease might cost you a little bit more money. And will that allow you to have some capital growth still with that property? Now, that's for one individual property as an investor without even discussing location and rental demand. So in Australia, typically we can go and we can get appraisals from before we acquire a residential property, even commercial property. We can get appraisals and look at what the market is actually paying for that type of asset class. Now, here in Indonesia, you don't have real estate agents that are going to actually do that, and you're probably looking at holiday rentals or monthly rentals. Now, that's a lot of drama in itself, and you aren't going to be sure on how much you can pay. Now, you can you can do your own research, I guess, and look at how much those certain types of assets are renting for on Airbnb and Booking.com, and then try to translate that to what you're going to achieve with rental income from your property that you acquire. However, there's with holidays, holiday makers, and I know Bali being a very transitional place, people come in and they'll maybe go, yeah, I want to rent for, and I did this myself personally. I said that I have the intention to rent where I'm at right now for a year, 2 years, maybe more, if I liked it. And I just secured 3 months and paid 3 months up front for it. The more you pay up front, the cheaper it is typically for the rent. But I turned around and found another place that I was like, oh, this is a bit better. So after 3 months, I'm gone. It's a very transitional place, and I kind of felt a little bit bad for the owner here because he's an amazing man. However, he will fill this place for sure. It's a really nice place, but that's the stuff that you need to deal with. Even if you've got somebody that is being very upfront and giving you a lot of leeway in terms of when they're coming and going, they're the sorts of things you need to deal with. Then you've got the areas, which is tricky because Bali it's a small place, but it's got little pockets in so many different areas. So where in Bali do you want to invest, right? Ahmed, do you want to invest up Balian Way? Do you want to invest in Canggu? Canggu has this gnarly ecosystem in itself. Do you want to invest in like Denpasar? Do you want to invest in Kuta? Do you want to invest in Uluwatu? Do you want to invest in Unggusan? All these areas that people don't really know. And how do you know what areas are going to pop off the next and become more popular, right? For example, if you invest and try and acquire a villa in Bingen, you're going to pay top dollar. And right now, for me, the sentiment of the market of what I sense and feel based on speaking to a lot of expats and seeing the tourism come and go is Bingen is at its peak. That's a personal opinion. I don't have facts around that and data and stuff, but that's just a personal opinion from living here. And then there's some other areas that I know if I was to invest in Bali where I would go away and invest. Also, traveling all of Indonesia, there's other places that I know, different islands that would probably secure you a better ROI if you're looking on cash return. Then you've also got this thing where COVID comes in and tourism is zero in Bali. Everybody, all the locals had to leave Uluwatu, Canggu, and they hated this time period because they needed to go back to their village and work on the farms because there's no tourism to sustain the whole ecosystem that is built on tourism in these locations. So you can have these events that can kill your investment for 3 or 4 years. So that's without talking about dealing with running the property as an Airbnb, and also not talking about the construction costs, and also having something built and managing that build. From what I know, the people that have bought land here, and the people that I know that have bought land to mostly live on and make a little bit and do a quick transaction. So they've bought land, built the property themselves to quickly sell and work their way up to acquiring their own sort of home that they don't have ongoing expenses for because they own it outright. Now, building is a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. For example, I have a lease. I'm getting a 4-year lease on a new place in about 6 weeks' time, and I'm going to do a small bathroom renovation, and and paint the room, and do it up, buy custom made furniture and all that sort of stuff. It'll be very cheap to do. However, I am anxious about the experience of doing the renovation because I know that I need to watch the tradespeople like a hawk because they don't have regulations here and they'll just do it however they want to do it. And the communication barrier is a tricky one. It's just, and that's just a bathroom renovation and a couple of things in the room. Now, with a full villa from start to finish, and from what I've been told with friends that have done this, you have to go to the construction site every single day, give them cigarettes, ice creams, and monitor the whole thing. And if you acquiring something as an investor and you don't have a Western person micromanaging the builders and the construction workers and making sure it's quality build, and from what I've seen is you can end up with some real basket case investments. So there's a lot there, and I can dig into more if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is an education channel, so it's good to give you the warts and all. I definitely think there's people making money, and there's good money to be made there in Bali. On the pros side of, let's have a debate, shall we? Let's just sort of twist this one. Pros is, good cash flow, good sort of lifestyle investment. If you're not sort of chasing that higher, return on investment from a capital growth and an income play, it could be sort of nice to have a villa that you call home, that you can live over there for every 6 years. You had a really good question before you started taking into the in-depth knowledge of what it actually entails to physically, invest in Bali. So I think it's important to rewind and listen to what Jared just said if you are considering it. The pros that I see is mainly in the favor of the developers. I think they're making a lot of money.
Absolutely.
Buying, securing doing that hard work, go in, secure the lease, build the product and sell it. They're the ones making the money, not the investors who are there buying and holding for cash flow and emotional purposes. So, there's people that are out there. If you are considering going to Bali, I'd say, the construction quality is not as good. Definitely red flags all around, even after 3 years of the property being built. So your maintenance costs, they don't factor that into your cash flow because, like in Australia, they say, oh, it's a brand new build. You won't have maintenance for the first 10 years. I call bullshit on that. You're going to be having maintenance issues your whole entire way through. And as Jared alluded to as well, construction cost blowout. People put their hand out for more money. You're not in control of that. You're not in control of the country and their regulations, fees like that. Like that's just it's pretty dangerous on that front, especially for people's perception of cashed up. I guess internationals going in there, they don't really like they see it as they've got heaps of money, where you might not. If you're investing, half of your sort of savings into this investment for cash flow, then I think you're going to be unpleasantly surprised. But yeah, like I see really good opportunity sort of flipping it on back to the pros. Like, yeah, develop if you understand that game and you have the contacts in the country. I think you could. There's a bit of a hype around there. The tourism sector is doing really well. But what I like about that construction side is that, you're in and you're out within sort of 12 to 24 months. So your risk of, I guess, international events like, the COVID situation, that economy itself is basically, as Jared said, tourism based. So without a strong tourist market, you're left with a potential asset that doesn't have any income for a worst case scenario, I think, is that COVID lockdown period. Will that come again in the future? I mean, if you look at the history of the different swine flu, Ebola, there's always something coming through from a, I guess, medical point of view to be cautious of. So to think that something like that in the future will not happen, I think is naive. But I actually and I think what you're doing, Jared, is probably the smartest way to actually get your toe in the market. If you're thinking about the Bali thing, it's a lot more time intensive of you. It's probably not a passive thing for you doing it from Australia. Like you'd actually have to go over there. But I like that strategy of, because these things degrade over time, you can go and get a lease on a villa. Like it's sort of that contrarian investing that I like to always focus in on, which is don't do what everyone else is doing. Don't get caught up in the, hundreds of thousands of dollars of marketing campaign to convince you to buy the shiny pamphlet investment. Go over there, find an asset in a great location, basically what Jared's actually doing, but he's not doing it for return on investment. He's doing it for lifestyle because he lives there. But you get that lease over that property. So you can, over in Bali, it's kind of like a commercial property. Once you have that lease, you can do what you want to that property. It's yours to maintain. So you can actually go there, get a lease for a lot less time frame. You can try the market out for a few years, and then do that internal renovation to build it up to that point where you've got that better quality internal fixtures and fittings that's more modern, and that the actual structure itself, because it's still standing there, 10 years later when you're getting that lease, chances are if it's still there, you can actually have a bit more of an understanding of what that condition is of the property, what to expect, and then you can go and get quotes and things like that to complete the works. But I think if you are going down that path, once again, you want to have someone like, not that I'm putting you in the hot seat there, Jared, but you might have a Westerner contact that can oversee that project management side, where you're going out there and throwing the ciggies around and give them lollipops and whatever you need to do to say don't cut corners, because they're not like it's a different culture, right?
They just don't have the education that we have in Australia, unfortunately, and it's a very different culture, and I admire what they, I admire them a lot, because the Indonesian people, because they have very little and they're very resourceful, and it's a great trait to have for sure. It's we expect, because of us being born in Australia, we expect very different quality and results. And I think if somebody wanted to go away, invest in Indonesia and run multiple villas, for holiday let, then yeah, you could do a similar thing to me. Is, I'm doing this. I'm not going to make money on this. It's not to make money. It's to live, and and secure. The location that I've secured is a really nice location. It's mostly about that.
Hang on. Let me go back a little bit from my investor mind. Is you're making money out of it because you're securing the asset at a lot lower price on a monthly rental basis. You're then going to be living it, like for you to rent the end product of what you're going to finish off with, it's going to cost you more. Like if you just went straight into that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So like this nice place that I'm in now, it's a brand new reno. It's the VIP room, he calls it. He built it for himself, right, to live in, and I'm paying top dollar for it. Versus where I'm going to move, it's not the nicest. It's old, and it will be, I'll renovate it to a great condition like this, and so it won't necessarily make me money, but it will save me a lot of money in the long run. And I would suggest that people do something like that. I could let this out when I go away if I come back to Australia for 6 months, I could let this out for 6 months. And I would be able to charge triple the amount that I'm paying, maybe quadruple the amount that I'm paying right now. And in the 3 years time, it might be, 5 times the amount that I'm paying. So maybe that's a way to go without having to, like have the risk of something built that isn't quality, and you take the liability. I've spot on agree with you, Sam, that the developers are crushing it over here. And that's because they're securing leases very cheap. They know how to do it. And then what they're doing is, and I say the buyer's agents are probably doing the same, clipping a bit of the ticket for selling these products, is that they're securing the lease super cheap. They know a bunch of construction companies that will slap these things up. They look really good for 6 months. And then you're left with, everybody else in that transaction is gone, and they're not going to be there to support you. So my philosophy is, if you've got, say, 100 grand that you want to invest, you could go away and invest in maybe, I saw a villa for sale that was being sold by developers for 100,000 US in a place called Balangan, or Balangan, people say in Australia. That wasn't the most amazing location. It will be probably, and it will be an up-and-coming location, but it was a 2-bedroom, 100,000 US dollars, and there was no comparables, like rental comparables to that asset, so I wouldn't know how much I could actually charge. It would have been the top of the market for sure, but I had no certainty on what my ROI would be. So then if I take $100, how do I, am I going to get what's after 7 years back? I'm going to get my 100K. Now, if I'm an Australian and I earn an income in Australia, which I do, and I pay taxes, which I do, I can then go away and get finance for this $100,000, and I could buy maybe a residential property for 500K. Right now, if that grows at 5% a year, being very conservative, property is roughly around 8% a year. And typically, if you've got someone like Sam in your corner, you're going to get a better ROI. But let's just say 5% a year on 500K. What's that? 25 grand a year just in capital growth. And then, so after 5 years, I'm going to get my money back. Sorry, 4 years, I'm going to get my money back. That's faster than the inequity growth, and that's being very conservative, right? Typically, people that are buying in great locations are achieving, 8 to 10% ish a year. So that could be 2 to 3 years you get your 100K back, and you have far less risk, it's far less effort, and it's a matter of opinion and what sort of like investment style you would like to take on. Personally, for myself, I'd rather keep investing in Australia for those reasons. Finance, like the access to capital, access to money is helps a lot in this versus just using cash and then taking that risk. So yeah, what's your investment strategy?
Yeah, well, my investment strategy for people that are like, really like that, like my family, like we love Bali. Obviously, there's just great culture, great food, there's a lot to love about it. But also, I'm always thinking of the opportunity cost of where to put your money. Yeah, especially when you can think about all the risks involved, that's just what I do every day. Is well, what's the risk? What's the return? Is it worth it? Everyone will make their own decision. But you want to be really educated on the figures that people are throwing at you from when you're going international. But yeah, I'd sit there and go, my strategy for those that are actually really keen on doing it and they're not so like they want exposure to it is to invest in Australian assets primarily, and then maybe pull a little bit of equity out of your portfolio. Use that as the holding for the lease, because it's being pulled out of your investment asset. If you did have an investment asset in Australia, that debt is still tax deductible. Use that cash, you go and buy, or you go and lease a property and then renovate it. But oversee that renovation, be very diligent. You're going to be getting probably in a better location as well. Because this is another thing that I found driving through, especially your neck of the woods, Uluwatu. I was just blown away by how much construction has been put through into that location. Like from pretty much Nusa Dua through to Uluwatu was just construction sites the closest I got into Uluwatu, it was basically every street. But then going from Nusa Dua over there, it was pretty much like at least one new villa construction site every block was sort of being done up. And I was just like, obviously there's a massive population and the visa requirements aren't as stringent for Indonesia than it is maybe in Australia and other parts of the world, but still heavily risky with the supply. And I can't track the data metrics that, as you mentioned before, is like, where is the best location? Like, well, you kind of just got to go over there and you're making an opinion. Like, I do like Uluwatu. I like Bingen, just from a livability, and you can see that it's gentrified. Canggu, really well built out, but it's still like, I don't know, man. Like, as a family person with kids, you can't forget having a car, forget driving around in a car. Like, it's a nightmare. I went to the Waterbomb Park in, I think, Kuta or whatever it was. It was like, would have been maximum 15-minute scooter drive. It took us over an hour in the car just sitting there. Like, and that was, I think it was like on a Monday, it's just horrible.
So, it depends. It depends on if you're moving to live or if you're just like getting a holiday let. I've spent a bit of time here now, and even myself, I would know some areas if I was to invest here. I would know some areas that I believe would pop off and do really, really well. But again, it's all based on speculation still.
Well, give us the tips, mate. Because I don't know, if I had just the lazy 20 grand, could I go over there and secure a lease, do a bit of a reno? Because it's...
Oh, you could secure it. So I had a friend who secured a lease and built, and it wasn't in area that holidaymakers would want to stay. It cost him 200 grand, doubled his money in a year, but it was a lot of work. So when you say you doubled your money, did he work for a year to earn 200K? Maybe, and that's what people don't factor in is time as well. And not just time. What compounds that is stress, which is, I think it's going to age you far quicker than time, personally, I believe. So there's those things to consider, which most people don't consider. Myself being a part of one of those people in my younger years, I didn't consider stress and didn't consider time as an expense when trying to achieve something. And that's something that we should be thinking about.
Yeah, it's going down the philosophical path. Maybe we start a new potty about living life. But you're looking good, mate. You reversed those construction years, and you've wait till you have kids, and then that's it's not stressful. It's just full
Come
on.
on. It's got to be some stressing having kids.
Yeah, you sit there, you're watching them on the park, and you're like, oh my God, you're going to break your bones. But then depends on what kind of parenting you want to be.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah,
interesting.
cool. Well, anything else that you want to finish on?
Yeah,
In
give
terms
me
of,
give the listeners some.
oh,
I mean, obviously this is Bali. I'm not pooing on it. I'm just kind of just saying, don't invest in it for cash flow, and don't buy a new villa. Is my 100% recommendation. There's companies that are competitors to myself, and it's not that I like. They're doing really great things in Australia, but there is a big push in this current environment with the interest rates rising, where people are still chasing cash flow, and that's probably because there's the aging population. They need cash flow to sort of supplement their retirement, and they're looking at these alternative strategies, and it's fraught with risk that people aren't going to tell you in the glossy brochure, because this is the other thing too. These builders, these developers, these companies that are getting you to invest in there, like you're paying, sort of 30 would maybe 45 was probably the cheapest I'd heard of, to about 150, 200,000 for a villa. Of that, that salesperson, whether it's the buyers agents or the investment people, builders, developers, they're paying that salesperson 30,000, maybe even $40,000 to get that sale through.
yeah.
So that's a massive red flag in its own sense, and why there's such a big push for it within the industry. So what I'd say is just be very careful. Go in with your eyes wide open, and then so my son just walked in and he's playing with my surfboard. I'm waiting for him to knock that out. Oh.
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, spot on. It's about understanding what risks are involved, and then working out if you want to take them on. I think developers are really the ones that are winning out of this, and not to say that it's not something to look at if you are slightly interested. Just weigh up, do your cost benefit analysis of like, what amount of cash am I going to get return on this, investing in Bali and then investing in Australia, what's going to provide me less stress, less effort, and what's going to be a more enjoyable experience. And be conservative with your numbers. So I think that's a good wrap up.
If you have any questions, reach out. More than happy to try and guide you through this process. But Jared is not a project manager, so don't ask that question.
Absolutely not. My phone will not be available. My phone number is not available.
Yeah, we're all about lifestyle here and living the most stress-free, relaxed life possible, and sharing the journey of how we're doing it. And I think Jared's definitely leading that path, living over there, working on his tan, working on his forehand and his backhand turns.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. As always, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you guys, and we'll speak to you on a new one soon.